This video is about applying the properties of a parallelogram. So remember that a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides. So a quadrilateral, remember, means that it's a four-sided figure. So if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, like we just said, we have two parallel sides, and remember that the little arrows represent parallel. And then we have a couple of other properties that follow. So one property is that the opposite sides are congruent. So the sides that are opposite of each other are both parallel and congruent. The opposite angles are congruent. So the angles that are in the opposite corners are congruent to each other. The consecutive angles are supplementary. So for example, if this angle was 100 and this angle was 100, the other two angles would have to be 80. And then last, we have diagonals in our parallelogram that bisect each other. It does not mean that the diagonals are congruent to each other. It means that the piece of one diagonal is congruent to the piece of that same diagonal. So let's use these properties to solve for a variable. So remember that the opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. So PQRS is a parallelogram by definition. Find the values of x and y. So remember that our opposite sides are congruent to each other. So we would have two equations. We would have 5x plus 2 equals 32, and we would have 4y plus 2 equals 26, and we're going to solve for x and y. So to solve for x, we would subtract 2 from both sides, and then divide, and we get that x is 6. In the other equation, we would subtract 2 from both sides, and then divide by 4, so y is also 6 in this case. Number 2, remember that our opposite sides are also congruent again. So I have 10x minus y equals 22 plus 3y. And I have 6x plus y equals 4x plus 8. So in the first equation, I'm going to subtract 3y from both sides, and I get 10x minus 4y equals 22. And in the second equation, I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides, so I get 2x plus y equals 8. So now that I have my two equations, I can use a system to solve. So I'm going to write the equations on top of each other. 10x minus 4y equals 22, and 2x plus y equals 8. So in this case, I'm going to decide to eliminate my x's, so I'm going to multiply by negative 5. So the first equation stays the same. And in the second equation, I get negative 10x minus 5y equals negative 40. So my x's cancel out. I'm left with negative 9y equals negative 18. And when I divide by negative 9, y is 2. Once I know y is 2, I have to go back and substitute to get x. So in the first equation, 10x minus 4 times 2 equals 22. 10x minus 8 equals 22. I can add 8 to both sides and then divide by 10. So my ordered pair would be 3, 2. Remember, in a parallelogram, your opposite angles are also congruent. So the angles that are in the opposite corner, so P and R are congruent, and Q and S are congruent. So I have 8x plus 22 equals 102, and I have 5y plus 3 equals 78. So in the first equation, I'm going to subtract 22 from both sides, and when I subtract 22, I get that 8x equals 80. When I divide by 8, x is 10. In the second equation, I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, so 5y equals 75. And when I divide by 5, y is 15. Number 4, the same idea still, so our opposite angles are congruent, so P is congruent to R, and Q is congruent to S. So we have x squared minus x equals 110. And we have y squared plus 3y equals 70. So remember, when there's a y or a variable and a variable with an exponent, we're going to factor. So I'm going to subtract 110 to both sides. So now I need two numbers that multiply to 110 and add to -1, because there's really a -1 in front of this negative x. So I get x minus 11 and x plus 10 equals 0. So when I solve, I switch the sign, so x is 11 and x is -10. And in this case, both of those would work if I substitute them back in, so I'm going to keep both answers. In the second equation, I'm going to subtract 70 from both sides, so y squared plus 3y minus 70 equals 0. So I need two numbers that multiply to -70 and add to 3. So I would have y plus 10 and y minus 7 equals 0. So when I switch the signs, I get y is -10 and y is 7. Remember also that consecutive angles are supplementary. So if consecutive angles are supplementary, that means together the angles in a row equal 180. So the easiest thing to do in this case is try to keep the variables separate if possible. So I can use these two angles to equal 180, and these two angles equal 180, and my variables are separated. So I have 11x plus 8 plus 62 equals 180. So I get 11x plus 70 equals 180. Subtract 70, so 11x equals 110. Divide, so x is 10. And I can do the same thing with the y equation. So 5y plus 3 equals 3y, plus 3y minus 7 equals 180. So when I combine like terms, I get 8y minus 4 equals 180. I can add 4 to both sides. 8y equals 184. And when I divide by 8, I get y is 23. In number 6, again, we're using that the angles are supplementary. So we have these two angles with a y that are next to each other, so which means that they're equal to 180. So we have y squared plus 4y plus 2y plus 20 is equal to 180. When we combine like terms, we get y squared plus 6y plus 20 equals 180. So we need to move the 180 to the other side, so we get x squared plus 6, or y squared plus 6y minus 160 equals 0. So we need two numbers that multiply a negative 160 and add to 6. So we have y plus 16 and y minus 10. When we solve, we flip our signs, so we get y is -16 and y is 10. We're going to do the same thing to solve for the x using the x squared plus 1x and the 70. So we have x squared plus 1x plus 70 is equal to 180. So we can subtract 180 from both sides. We get x squared plus 1x minus 110 equals 0. So we need numbers that multiply to a negative 110 and add to 1. So we're going to have x plus 11 and x minus 10 equals 0. So when I flip my signs, I get x is -11 and x is 10. Remember, the last property then of parallelograms is that the diagonals bisect each other. So the piece from the same diagonal is congruent to the other piece. So in this case, AC was bisected into two congruent parts, and BD was bisected into two congruent parts. So we have 11x equals 22, and we have 3y minus 6 equals 24. So in the first equation, we're going to divide both sides by 11. We get x is 2. In the second equation, we're going to add 6 to both sides. So we get 3y equals 30. Divide by 3, we get y is 10. Now, the same thing happens in number 8. So AD was bisected and BC was bisected. So we have 4y minus 6 equals 2y plus 40. So I'm going to subtract 2y from both sides and add 6. So we get 2y equals 46. When I divide, y is 23. Same thing to solve for x. So we have 9x plus 44 equals 6x plus 68. So we're going to subtract 6x from both sides. We get 3x plus 44 equals 68. Subtract 44 from both sides. We get 3x equals 24. And when we divide, we get x is 8. So complete each statement about the parallelogram ABCD. So we have angle ABC, which is this whole angle over here, has to be congruent to, remember that the property is opposite angles are congruent, so it must be congruent to this angle over here, which is angle CDA. We also have that angle BCD, so this angle is congruent to its opposite angle, so we would say angle DAB. BC is congruent to, so remember in parallelograms the opposite sides are congruent, so BC would have to be congruent to AD. And the next one we have that AB is parallel to, well, the opposite side from AB is CD, so it must be parallel to CD. Then we have angle ACD. So angle ACD is congruent to what? Well, remember that our opposite sides are parallel, so if AC is parallel to CD, this line right here is a transversal, which means the angle must be congruent to its alternate interior, so angle BAC. And in the last problem, we have that angle BAD plus angle ABC is equal to what? Well, they're next to each other, so they're consecutive angles. Remember that consecutive angles are supplementary, so they're equal to 180 degrees.